The sun was dying red above the slave market on planet Gravax. The air smelled like sweat, rust, and fear. Metal cages stood in lines, each holding frightened creatures. Some were small, some tall, some had fur or tails or glowing eyes. But all were slaves. All were silent. Inside one of the cages sat a young alien girl. Her skin was light blue and covered in dirt. Her thin arms had bruises. Her yellow eyes were full of sadness. She didn't even cry anymore. She had learned. Crying never helped. Her name had been taken long ago. The slavers called her Unit 7B. She was only 17 years old. Today she heard the noise again. Boots on metal floors, voices shouting, and the terrible sound of the auction bell. The slavers were bringing in buyers. Next up, 7B. Strong lungs, healthy bones, obedient and quiet, the auctioneer shouted. The cage door opened with a sharp creak. Strong hands pulled her up. She didn't resist. There was no point. Chains were locked around her wrists and ankles. They were cold, heavy. They felt like death. A crowd gathered, mostly aliens, a few humans. Most of them looked at her like she was meat, like she wasn't a person at all. Their eyes scanned her body for strength, for value, for use. She looked down. She hoped no one would bid. Then she saw him. A human man, middle-aged, gray in his beard, wrinkles near his eyes. He looked different. He didn't stand close. He didn't stare at her like the others. He was watching the slaver instead. Human, the auctioneer barked. You looking to buy? The man didn't speak right away. He stepped closer slowly. The girl raised her head and looked at him for the first time. His eyes weren't cold. They weren't hungry. They were tired and kind. What's her price? The man asked. Cheap, damaged goods, only 400 credits. Why? The auctioneer laughed. She doesn't talk much. Broken spirit. Had her too long. The man stared at the girl. She stared back. She thought he would walk away. No one wanted the quiet ones. But he didn't. He pulled out a small pouch and handed over the credits. The slaver grabbed it, grinning. Pleasure doing business. The girl was shocked. Why would a human buy someone like her? She waited for the pain to come. A slap, a collar, a whip. That's what always came after a sale. But instead the man knelt down beside her. He unlocked the wrist chains first, then the ankles. His hands were warm, not rough. You can walk? He asked softly. She nodded, slowly. Good, he said. Let's get you out of here. He didn't grab her arm. He didn't pull her. He just started walking and waited for her to follow. She didn't understand. Was this a trick? Still, her legs moved on their own. They walked through the market in silence. Everyone stared. A few other slavers looked confused. One shouted, Hey, aren't you gonna leash her? The man just kept walking. Soon they reached a small transport ship. It wasn't big, it wasn't clean, but it looked safe. He opened the door and let her step in first. Inside, she stood frozen. He went to the back and brought out a folded blanket and a water bottle. He placed both on the bed and said, You can sleep here. She stared at him, unsure. I'm not going to hurt you, he added. You're safe now. Safe? No one had ever said that to her. Are you lying? She whispered. It was the first word she had spoken in weeks. The man shook his head. No, I bought you so no one else would. But why? He looked at her and said, Because you shouldn't be in a cage. Her legs gave out. She dropped to the floor and held the blanket to her chest. She didn't cry, she couldn't. He didn't try to touch her. He just stepped back and said, Sleep. I'll be in the front cabin. If you're hungry, there's food in the box by the wall. He turned to leave. But before he walked out, she asked in a quiet voice, What's your name? He paused. "Call me Daniel," he said. She didn't answer. She just stared at him, and for the first time in a long time she felt something warm inside. Not hope, but maybe the beginning of it. The small ship hummed as it flew through the black sky. Stars passed like ghosts. Inside, the girl sat still on the bed, the soft blanket wrapped around her tightly. She didn't sleep. She didn't blink much. Her yellow eyes just watched the door. Would he come back with a chain? Would he show his true face now? But hours passed. The human, Daniel, never entered her room. He didn't yell. He didn't order her around. He just stayed in the front cabin, quietly flying. She heard soft music playing once. Human music. It sounded sad and beautiful. By morning, she was still awake. The door clicked open. She jumped. Daniel stepped in. He held something wrapped in cloth. "I made food," he said. "It's not much." He placed the bundle on a small table and backed away. "You don't have to eat. I just thought you might want something warm." She didn't move, didn't answer. She just stared. After a moment, he nodded and walked back out, leaving the food untouched. She waited 5 minutes. 10. Then, slowly, she crawled to the table, unwrapped the cloth. It was simple stew, soft bread. Nothing smelled like poison. She took one bite, then another. Her hands shook. She ate all of it. Later that day, the ship landed on a small planet with green hills and wind that didn't smell like metal or fire. There was no one around. No cages. No guards. Just silence and clean air. The girl stepped outside, barefoot. Her feet touched real ground for the first time in years. Daniel watched her from a distance. "This is my home. You can stay as long as you want." She turned sharply. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked. Daniel sat on a rock nearby. "Because someone should have been nice to you a long time ago." She narrowed her eyes. "No one helps someone like me without wanting something back." "I don't want anything," he said. "Not from you." "Then why buy me?" Daniel looked at the sky, then spoke slowly. "I saw you in that cage, and I remembered someone else. Someone I couldn't save. I failed her. I won't fail again." The girl didn't know what to say. Her chest felt tight. Her body was still, ready to run, but her mind was confused. This wasn't how slave buyers acted. She sat down slowly in the grass. Daniel stood and said, "Come inside when you're ready. There's clean clothes and water, and a mirror." "A mirror?" "Inside the house." She found the mirror. She hadn't seen herself in years. The girl in the glass looked like a stranger, dirty, thin, scared. But under all that, she could still see something. Maybe beauty, maybe strength. She stared at herself for a long time. In the corner of the room, a folded towel and clean clothes waited. Not a uniform, not slave rags, just soft clothes. She didn't know what to do with kindness. It felt like a trick, a trap, but she picked up the towel anyway. That night she heard thunder. Rain tapped the roof. It reminded her of the night her mother was taken away. She curled up in the bed, shivering. Her breath grew faster. Then she heard footsteps. Daniel knocked gently on the door. "Are you all right?" She didn't answer. "Can I come in?" he asked. Her voice came out small. "No." "Okay," he said. "I'll stay outside your door in case you get scared." She didn't know why, but her eyes began to water. No one had ever said they would stay before. No one had ever asked for permission to enter her space. That night, she cried softly into the pillow. But not because she was afraid. This time, she cried because something inside her was breaking. The cold wall around her heart had one small crack now. In the morning, she opened the door. Daniel was still sitting there, half asleep. She looked at him for a long moment, then asked, "What happened to the girl you couldn't save?" Daniel opened his eyes. "She was my daughter," he said quietly. "She was taken during the war. I was too late." The girl looked down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Daniel gave a soft smile. "You're not her, but maybe I can still be the man I should have been." She didn't smile back, but for the first time she said, "My name, it's Nara." Daniel nodded. "Nice to meet you, Nara." And just like that, for the first time in a long time, Nara felt human again. The house was dark and quiet. The wind outside howled softly through the trees. Inside, only one dim light stayed on in the hallway. Nara lay on the bed, her eyes wide open. Her blanket was warm, but her heart was cold. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the cage again. She heard the slavers shouting, felt their hands, heard her screams. She sat up, breathing fast. Then she heard something strange. Not yelling, not pain. Laughter. She got out of bed and walked quietly down the hallway. Her bare feet made no sound. She moved like a shadow. The sound came from the kitchen. She peeked inside. Daniel sat alone at the table. A small screen glowed in front of him. A video was playing. A little girl laughed on the screen. She had long brown hair and bright eyes. A younger Daniel was in the video too, chasing her playfully. Around a garden, Nara stared. Her chest tightened. That must have been his daughter. Daniel didn't see her. He was lost in the memory. His eyes were wet, but he smiled at the screen. Nara stepped back, but the floor creaked. Daniel turned. For a second, he looked surprised. Then he turned off the screen and gave a soft smile. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. Nara said nothing. She stood frozen like a hunted animal. He didn't move closer. "You want tea? It helps me on hard nights." She hesitated, then nodded. They sat together in the kitchen, 2 cups of tea between them. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was soft, careful. Nara stared at the cup in her hands. "She looked happy," she said quietly. Daniel's face became sad. "She was, until the war started." "What happened to her?" Nara asked. He closed his eyes. "They said it was a mistake. They took the wrong ship, the one she was on. She was only 9. Nara looked down. "I was taken too, my whole family. We were told we'd be relocated. Instead, we were sold." Daniel nodded slowly. "I hate what they did to you, to so many." She looked at him, studying his face. "Why are you still kind?" He looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "I've seen humans hurt aliens. I've seen aliens hurt each other. But you're different." Daniel sighed. "I wasn't always this way. I used to be a soldier. I've done things I'm not proud of, hurt people, burned homes." Nara's eyes widened. "Then why save me?" "Because I know pain," he said. "And I believe helping one person is better than saving none." That night, Nara returned to her room, but sleep didn't come. Her thoughts were loud. Then, the dream came. Chains, darkness, screaming. A collar locked around her neck. She was dragged back to the cage. She cried for help. No one came. Suddenly, a shadow entered the dream. A man, with gray hair. He reached for her. She screamed and woke up, shaking, sweating, breathing hard. Without thinking, she ran. Out of the room, down the hallway, into the front room. Daniel was asleep in a chair. She stood there, crying silently. Then he opened his eyes. He didn't speak. She fell to her knees. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to wake you." Daniel knelt down. "You're safe now." She shook her head. "I don't know how to feel safe." He didn't hug her. Didn't touch her, just sat near her and said nothing. That silence, it didn't feel empty. It felt safe. She cried for a long time, not from fear this time, but because someone finally listened. No questions, no chains, just kindness. When her tears stopped, she wiped her face and whispered, "Thank you." Daniel smiled. "You don't have to thank me." "I do," she said, "because I forgot what it felt like to be treated like a person." Daniel looked at her and replied gently, "Then let me remind you." That night, Nara fell asleep on the floor near the chair, and for the first time, since she was taken, she slept without fear. The days passed quietly after that night. Nara no longer flinched when Daniel entered a room. She started helping in small ways, washing dishes, folding clothes, feeding the small garden outside. Each day she felt a little more like herself, but something still sat heavy in her mind. Who was Daniel, really? He was kind, patient, quiet. But sometimes when she watched him from the doorway, she saw something behind his eyes. A shadow, a memory he never spoke of. And then there was his scar, a thick one, running from behind his ear down to his neck. She had noticed it one morning when he leaned down to grab a bag. He didn't try to hide it, but he didn't explain it either. That night, Nara made a choice. She waited until he was asleep in the chair by the window, the way he always did. Then, she entered the front room and opened the drawer he always kept locked. It wasn't locked tonight. Inside, she found an old military badge, worn and scratched, a small hollow chip with a black symbol on it, and a folded piece of cloth, a red patch torn from a uniform. She scanned the badge and froze. Her hands shook. Daniel Valar, former colonel, Earth Dominion Forces, War Crimes Investigation pending. Nickname, the Butcher of Narvak. Her breath caught in her throat. She backed away fast. The chair creaked behind her. Daniel sat up. "Nara?" he said softly. She dropped the badge. He saw it fall. Their eyes met. The silence between them felt louder than a scream. "You were a soldier," she said. "A war criminal." Daniel didn't move, didn't lie. "Yes. You killed people." He nodded once. "Yes." "Aliens?" she asked. He took a deep breath. "Too many." Her eyes filled with tears. "I trusted you." "I know." She turned to run, but stopped at the door. "I wasn't always this man," he said. "And I'm not proud of what I was." She didn't look back. "Then why did you save me?" His voice was steady but full of pain. "Because I couldn't save my daughter, and I couldn't stop the blood on my hands. But maybe saving you can be my way of making peace with myself." She walked outside into the cold night. She didn't sleep. The next morning, she didn't speak to him. He didn't force her to. He just set food on the table and left. She stared at the plate. Her mind was full of voices. He lied. He's a killer. But he never hurt you. He sat with you while you cried. He bought you freedom. She picked up the spoon. Days passed. They didn't talk much. Daniel gave her space. One afternoon, she stood in the garden touching a flower. A blue one. It reminded her of the fields back on her home planet, before the slavers came. Daniel walked out, holding something in his hands. "I want to give you this," he said. It was a small hollow frame. When she turned it on, it showed a picture. His daughter, smiling, holding hands with someone blue-skinned. "She was your friend?" Nara asked. Daniel nodded. "Her name was Lavi. She was an alien girl. She saved my daughter from a burning ship, and died doing it." Nara stared at the picture. "You loved her?" "I owed her everything," Daniel said. "That's when I knew the war was wrong." "Then why did you keep fighting?" she whispered. "Because I was a coward." Nara looked at him long and hard, then said, "You're still trying to fight that war, but in a different way now." Daniel looked surprised. "You didn't just save me," she said. "You're saving yourself." He looked down. "Maybe you're right." "I haven't forgiven you," she added. "I don't expect you to," he said. "But I don't hate you," she finished. Daniel smiled a little. "That's more than I deserve." That night she didn't lock her door, and for the first time, she wanted to believe in second chances, even for a man once called the Butcher of Narvak. It began with a knock, a slow, heavy knock on the metal door of Daniel's home. Nara was in the back room, folding fresh clothes, ones Daniel had traded for last week in the nearby market. The knock came again. She froze. Daniel stood at the door, hand near a hidden panel on the wall. His eyes narrowed. "Stay in the back," he said quietly. Something in his voice had changed. She peeked through the hallway shadows, heart racing. He opened the door. 3 figures stood outside. Their boots were clean. Their uniforms were dark. But Nara recognized their faces instantly. Slavers, and not just any. The same slavers who sold her. One of them, big, ugly, red-eyed, smiled like a beast. "Well, well, Daniel Valar, the butcher living like a farmer." Daniel didn't move. "Why are you here?" "We followed a tracker," the slaver grinned. "One of our girls went missing. Blue skin, yellow eyes, very valuable." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You bought her, didn't you?" The slaver continued. "We just want her back. No trouble. You hand her over, and we leave you alone." Nara's heart pounded. She backed away, terrified. They had come for her. Again. Daniel didn't answer right away. Then in a cold voice he said, "She's not your property." The slaver laughed. "She's marked, Daniel. Stamped with our code. That makes her ours." "Not anymore," Daniel said. The second slaver stepped forward. "You think we care about your sad little redemption arc? You may be hiding in the hills now, but you're still the killer we knew. You can't protect her." Daniel's hand hovered over the panel. "Try me." The red-eyed slaver narrowed his gaze. "We'll give you a day to think. One day. Then we take her, or we take your house apart piece by piece." They turned and walked off. The moment the door closed, Nara burst into the room. "You can't fight them," she said. "You'll get killed." Daniel stared at her. "I'm not letting them touch you again." Her voice trembled. "You don't have to do this for me." "I'm not doing it for you," he said. "I'm doing it because it's right." She looked at him. He was no longer the quiet man sipping tea. He was the soldier again, but this time standing for her. That night, Nara packed her things. She left a note. "Don't fight them. I'm not worth your life." She ran. Through the trees, down the hills, but they found her before sunrise. The slavers surrounded her with bright lights and cold hands. "Told you she'd run," one laughed. "She still has the tracker in her," another grinned. "Makes it easy." They dragged her toward their ship. She kicked, screamed, "Daniel, don't come. Please don't come." She didn't want him to die. She knew he would come, and then she heard it. A long, high whistle. The slavers paused. Then a thud. One of them dropped. A dart in his neck. Another turned. Bang. Smoke. Screaming. Out of the shadows he came. Daniel. His face was dark with mud, his eyes sharp, and in his hands, an old war rifle. The last slaver raised his hand. "Wait, Daniel, think. You kill us, others will come. She'll never be safe." Daniel didn't blink. "I won't let you hurt her again." Bang. Nara sat frozen, watching as the slavers lay still in the dirt. Daniel dropped to his knees, breathing hard. His rifle smoked. Nara crawled to him. "Why did you come?" she whispered. "You really have to ask that now?" he said, exhausted. "I told you I wasn't worth it." He looked at her, blood on his face, pain in his eyes. "You were worth every shot." She stared at him, then whispered, "I don't want to run anymore." "You won't," he said. "Not while I'm here." She hugged him. For the first time, and he didn't pull away. That night she didn't cry, and Daniel didn't sleep. He sat on the porch watching the stars rifle beside him, because he knew more would come. But this time, they wouldn't be ready for her, because she had him. The ground was still scorched where the slavers had fallen, but now flowers were blooming there. Nara planted them herself. They were blue, her favorite color, like her skin, like her home world, what little she remembered of it. Daniel didn't say much, but every morning he stood beside her as she watered the soil. He didn't ask how she was. He didn't push her to talk. He just stayed close. And for Nara, that was enough. Weeks passed. The wounds inside her began to fade. Not gone, but quiet. She slept through the night now. She ate without shaking. She even smiled sometimes. Daniel fixed up the house, repaired a broken window, built a small bench under the tree. It wasn't much, but it felt like peace. One afternoon, Nara walked into the kitchen and found Daniel struggling with an old machine. "What is that?" she asked. He grunted. "It's supposed to make music." She tilted her head. "You mean like the sad songs you play at night?" "This one's different," he muttered. "It's happy." She watched him press buttons randomly, wires sparking. A strange, high-pitched noise came out. Not music. It sounded like a dying robot. Nara blinked. Daniel looked at the machine, then at her. She burst out laughing. It came out suddenly, sharp, clear, and loud. Then she covered her mouth in shock. She hadn't laughed in years, not since the day they took her. Daniel smiled gently. "Was it that bad?" She laughed again. It sounded like a sick animal. "I was going for cheerful flute," he said. She giggled once more. He didn't laugh with her, but he looked at her like her laughter was the most beautiful sound in the galaxy. And maybe, to him it was. Later they sat on the bench under the tree. Daniel handed her a carved wooden figure. It was small, rough, but shaped like a bird. She stared at it. "You made this?" He nodded. "When I was younger, before the war. I used to make things before I destroyed them." Nara turned the bird in her hand. "Why give it to me?" Daniel didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Because you remind me of it. Small, strong, free." Her smile faded a little. "I don't feel free. You're not in chains anymore," he said, "but I know your heart still is." She looked at him. "Will it ever stop hurting?" "Yes," he said quietly. "But not all at once. Little by little. One laugh at a time." She squeezed the bird in her palm. "I want to fly again," she whispered. "Like I used to. Before they broke me." Daniel looked at her. "You're already flying, Nara," he said. "You just haven't looked down yet." That night, while she slept, Daniel sat alone under the stars. He held a photo of his daughter. Her face smiled at him from the past. "I think she's stronger than both of us," he said softly. In the morning, Nara found him asleep outside, blanket over his shoulders, the carved bird resting beside him. She didn't wake him. She just sat down next to him, and for the first time, her heart felt light. Not healed, but healing. A year had passed, and yet, sometimes Nara still woke up expecting to see bars in front of her face, chains on her wrists, that cold metal floor beneath her body. But every time she opened her eyes, she saw sunlight, warm, sheets, the wooden bird on her bedside table, and a home that never asked her to kneel. She had changed. Her steps were steady now. Her voice no longer trembled. She laughed more, smiled more. She helped at the village nearby, trading herbs and healing plants she learned to grow with Daniel's help. They called her the girl with the blue hands, gentle, gifted, glowing with quiet strength. Most didn't know her past. Some guessed. None dared ask. except for one child, an alien boy who followed her one afternoon and asked, "Were you really a slave?" Nara had paused, then she bent down, looked the boy in the eyes and said, "I was, but not anymore." Daniel had changed too. He walked straighter now. His eyes had less weight. He laughed at her jokes. And sometimes, when no one was around, he played soft music on the old machine, now repaired. He still wore the scar, but it no longer defined him. One evening, Nara stood by the river with him. The stars shimmered above, and her reflection danced gently in the water. "Daniel," she said, "do you remember the first thing you said to me?" He smiled. "I think I said you were safe." She nodded. "You were right, but I didn't believe it then." "You believe it now?" he asked. She turned to him. "Yes," she said, "because I'm not just free. I'm loved." Daniel looked at her, quietly, and for the first time he reached out, gently, and touched her hand. She didn't pull away. The next day, Nara made a choice. She took the slaver brand on her shoulder, the mark that had once claimed her, and walked into the local healer's shop. "I want it gone," she said. An older alien woman nodded. "We'll replace it with something new." Hours later, Nara walked out with a symbol burned over the old scar, a bird in flight, carved just like the wooden one Daniel gave her. Months passed. Daniel built a second house beside his. "Why two?" she asked. "So you'll have your own space," he said. She laughed. "Or so I can kick you out when you snore." He raised an eyebrow. "I don't snore." "You do?" She smirked. He didn't argue. He just smiled. One morning, a stranger came to their hilltop. A soldier, in a black coat. He carried news of a bounty. Slavers were being hunted now. Earth's government had shifted. Old war crimes were being reopened. "You're still wanted," the man warned Daniel. "They know where you are." Daniel nodded. "Then I won't run." Nara stood beside him. "And he won't stand alone." The soldier looked between them and said no more. He left without reporting. Sometimes justice means leaving people to peace. Years later, stories spread of a blue-skinned woman with healing hands and the former killer who protected her. They said she once belonged to slavers, but a man gave her back her soul. Some said she was his daughter. Some said she was his wife. Others said nothing at all, but all agreed. She was never a slave again. Not to chains, not to fear, not to her past. And in the small house on the hill, with flowers in the garden and music in the wind, a woman laughed freely. Beside her was the man who once thought he had lost everything. Together, they built something new. Not perfect, but honest, human, and free.